Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy So What Day. I hope you're having a great start to your week. For me, it's the end of spring break. It's the first day my kids are back at school from spring break. So, whew, a great time was had by all, of course, as always for spring break, but it's always rough that first day back going to school, and I'm feeling it with them. But I'm super glad that we are in spring finally. The trees are starting to bloom and the weather is starting to change and all those good things that spring brings our way, including our spring mystery box. So I wanted to check in with you as I drop things all over the place and see who has received their spring mystery box. These went on sale last week on the first day of spring. So I'm guessing that some of you who have purchased up a box have probably maybe received it by now. And I'm just so curious to know what you think and how you're enjoying the projects that are included, the project patterns and ideas and motifs and designs, all the extra goodies that we throw in with our mystery boxes. So I'm just so curious to know how you're enjoying it. Yes, some people are saying my allergies are going crazy. I know, me too. I'm already starting to feel that little bit of sinus pressure and things as the, trees and everything starts blooming around us. So I feel your pain with that, but I'm actually going to share with you today some flowers you can enjoy without the allergies because we're going to make them out of thread. So if you're somebody who is really plagued by the pollen and things like this, we're going to create some pollen out of some Sulky Filaine thread, which is kind of our theme today, because I'm going to share with you our latest freebie design, and it's perfect for spring because it's called the Sulky Fuzzy Bunny. But before I get into that, let me know if you got your box. Oh, Colleen says she got her box and there's no golden ticket. Darn it. One of these days, you're going to get one of these golden tickets. There are 5 golden tickets worth $50 at sulky.com inside of some random spring mystery boxes. So be sure when you open up your mystery box, and if you haven't grabbed one yet, you still can. There's still some available. But as you know, once they're gone, they're gone. So you need to grab yours up while you can. But I have been told there are some golden tickets left. So you still have a chance to open up your box and find that golden ticket in there. Also, you will find a flyer or a printout, really, that contains a QR code and a link to grab up your freebies, grab up your designs and patterns that go with the items in your box. And you'll find this landing page that we put together that has all sorts of resources for learning more about the items in your box, grabbing up different patterns and projects and inspiration for things to create with the items in your box. You can create the patterns that we provide, the designs, etc. Or you can just go out on your own and create something really fun with the fabrics and notions and threads and stabilizers and everything that we've included in this spring mystery box. But I think it will get your creative juices flowing and just in that springy mindset and bring in some beautiful colors and things of this nature into your sewing room for spring. All right. Let's see. Susie says, I just received my spring mystery box. Very cool projects. All right. Great. Colleen says, I started the project in the mystery box. Love the fabrics. I thought you might love them. They're some of my favorites as well. And they are art gallery fabrics, which, as you know, I love art gallery fabrics. They're just such great quality. And I have been seeing them use this fabric collection that we included in the box all over their Instagram. And it's just such a beautiful fabric collection. I think you're really going to love it. So I don't want to give away too much more of what's in the mystery box because, after all, it is a mystery and that is part of the fun of it. All right, so lots of people saying hello. Hi, Joan. Oh, I'm sorry, it's gloomy out there in Kansas City. Hopefully you get some sunshine. Betsy says, okay, Filaine thread flowers and bunnies sound perfect. All right, well, before we get to our fuzzy bunny project today, I also want to check in and make sure that you are all registered for our next embroidery sewing session with Embroidery Library and Urban Threads. We are going to teach you all about patches, all about how to create a patch in the hoop of your embroidery machine, whether you are using a design that is digitized as a patch already, or if you want to create your own patch, you can either use an existing design and merge it with a blank patch design, which is what I've done here. This is an existing design that I had, and I created a patch using it, and I show you all how to do that. Whether you have software, you'll get a lesson for that, or if you don't have software, you'll get a video lesson for that as well. So you can do it myriad ways, depending on the resources that you have, the machine you have, all of that good stuff. Also, if you want to create a patch totally from scratch, let's say you're having a family reunion and you want to create a little logo for it and you want to create a patch so everybody has this same, kind of family reunion logo on a shirt, on a tote, something like that. Or they could just have the freestanding patch to kind of commemorate, maybe the weekend that you spend together, something like this, right? If you want to create your own patch, I go through an entire lesson of creating your own artwork, different online resources you can use to create your own artwork. It's not as hard as you think it might be. You don't have to use really sophisticated equipment to create your logo or a monogram or something like this. I tell you how to export it so that you can use either a digitizing service or you can digitize it yourself if you have the software capabilities to do that. Then I go through all the steps for how to create a patch design using that artwork. So you can either create your own patch and set up all the steps for, adding your fabric and adding a backing if you want to do that, etc., etc. Or you can merge your design, your own artwork design with a blank patch design and create a patch that way. So this session is really full of tons of lessons about patches and different ways of making them. So I think you will really, really enjoy it. And when you purchase the session, you will get this patch collection included with your purchase. So you get 3 designs by Urban Threads from their Crafty Merit Badge collection. One says Embroidery Wizard, one says Fabric Snob, and one says Black Belt in Hooping. So there's these, they're these cute little merit badges, right? So you can kind of transport yourself back into the Girl Scout days and create your cute little embroidery patches. Also, with the lessons, I include 3 lessons for how to stitch patches onto other fabrics or projects, such as a tote bag like this, where I'm kind of adding all these patches as I go along. So you will learn an in the hoop method for adding patches to projects and fabrics. You will also learn just a sewing machine method using invisible thread or matching thread. And then you will also learn, what is the 3rd lesson? It's in the hoop, sewing machine, and floating fabric under the hoop during the patch stitch out process. So 3 different methods for attaching patches as well with full video support. Also, with your patch collection, not only do you get those 3 crafty merit badge designs, you also get 4 blank patch designs. So you could see there's a little shield shape, a rectangle, a square, and a circle. These are going to be for when you want to merge an existing design, whether you create it yourself or it's a design that you have in your stash, when you want to merge those together to create your own patch so that you have a freestanding patch that you can then go apply to something else. Or I know a lot of people who just collect patches. They don't necessarily even sew them onto something else. So lots of different ways to use these designs. All right, you can also add a little hanging loop to your patch in the stitch out process, then add a backing to your patch. And then when you remove your stabilizer, you have a little hanging ornament. So these patches can be used so many different ways. I also talk about working with Sulky Felty and working with Sulky Twilly. Both of those fabrics are included in the kit that we put together for this session. There's 3 sheets of Sulky Felty and 4 limited edition sheets of Sulky Twilly. Twilly is a tackle twill fabric that already has a backing to it, making it really, really stable and stand up for patches. It's actually specifically made for embroidery patches. You can use it for other things as well, but it's just the perfect fabric to use as a patch base. And as you can see, this is a very, very dense design, and it works great on this Twilly. You'll also get a pack of needles, all the thread that you see here, and 2 packages of Sulky Fabri-Solvi stabilizer. This is going to be enough materials to make tons of patches. So these colors go with the colors of the designs that are included with the session, but you can mix and match them and create lots of custom patches. I also go through using different patch-based fabrics. So if you love working with cork fabric, like me, I'm often left with these odd little shaped pieces of cork and faux leather, and I just can't bring myself to throw them away because these fabrics are pretty pricey. And I'm always finding ways to use a little strip of cork for a key fob or for a little applique element or something like this. So I never throw those away. I really try to never throw any fabrics away, but little odds and ends, corners that we cut out of maybe when we're boxing the corner of a bag. Save those little corners because you can use them for things like patches. So have a little box next to your cutting table. Put those expensive little fabric remnants in there because you just never know when you can make a patch or something out of some cork fabric or a little tab or a little zipper pull accent or something like this. So cork fabric, you need to treat it a little bit differently if you're using that for a patch. I go through all the how-tos in the session. Also, faux leathers. You might want, nope, one of them fell down. You might love the look of a faux leather patch. You might remember, here we go. A few years ago, in one of our New Year's Eve sew-along events, we did a special patch collection for that event. One of the designs was I made this, and I created these out of faux leather scraps from the bags that we were featuring that year. So this is a black faux leather. See how nice that looks? It just looks so pretty and professional and a little bit higher end because we're using that faux leather. Here's another one. It's called Sewing Mends the Soul. Love it. Looks great on that faux leather. And then this one is Sewaholic. You could find these patch collections at sulky.com as well if you want to create these patches in addition to the ones in the session. But the important thing about this is that I give you all the how-tos for working with different fabrics as well. The Felty and Twilly are so easy to use for the patches, which is why we included them in the kit. They also create some different looks. So with the Felty, you're going to get a little bit of a fuzzy texture for your patch. You can kind of see that. This one has a pink backing to it. I also go over how to make your patch fusible and tips for fusing your patches so you don't disturb or harm all that thread work that you added to the front of your patch when you're fusing it. I never really recommend fusing a patch without also stitching it to the thing you're fusing it to. But there are certain circumstances where you might not be able to kind of reach the area. Let's say you are, sewing a patch to a tote bag and you want it along the lower edge. I give you tips for doing that as well. Turning your tote bag inside out, being able to access that area. So creating a fusible patch so it doesn't go anywhere while you have to maneuver and sew it on, very important. So I give you tips for that as well, and the recommended fabrics to use as your patch base if you want to be able to fuse it. Also, here's another cute patch that we released during the COVID times. This one says, "Sewed masks, pandemic." So this is another sort of merit badge patch. Like, I sewed masks during the pandemic. I really want to add this one to my tote bag too. I also wanted to show you. So here's that black belt in hooping that we did, or that I did out of the felty for that little bit fuzzy texture. And then here you could see the difference. I used a little scrap of faux leather. So you could see kind of the difference between those two. And you'll get all the how-tos for how to create all of these. So it's a really spectacular session, lots of information. You can refer to it again and again. The content never expires. And for your $19.99 that you pay for the session, for all of those videos, all of those lessons, you get almost $17 worth of embroidery designs. So it's almost like getting all of those videos and all of that content for $2, when you think about it that way. It's a great, great value, and I hope you will enjoy. I loved putting it together. I even learned some things along the way that I was really happy to put in that session and share with all of you as well. Oh, yes, Crystal's talking about using a scan and cut to cut out pieces from pricey cork and faux leather. Thank you for bringing that up, because part of the session, I also talk about using pre-cut fabrics and some different ways you can cut out your patch fabrics so that you don't have to go in and, trim your fabric like you're doing an in the hoop applique. So some options are, using a fabric cutter, using a die line file to cut out, to pre-cut your fabrics, using a embroidery template. All sorts of ideas are within the session as well, with full picture tutorials and videos. All right, Denise says, put the webinar for the patches in the chat, please. Yes, I will try. It is, thank you, Jill. Jill has put the link for that in the chat. It's also in the description for today's live stream. So you're probably not seeing the whole description because I put links to a ton of things in the description today. So be sure to click on that little button that says more, or it might say see more, depending on whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube today. And then the whole description will pop out. You'll find links for the patches session. You will also find links for our garden party mystery box, so you can grab one of those while they are still in stock. And then links for everything I'm about to talk about, which includes our free fuzzy bunny machine embroidery design that I am going to talk about next. Okay, I was getting a little distracted by some of the comments coming in. Marty says, how much? So I assume you're talking about the Patches webcast. So for $19.99, you get full access to the All the Patches embroidery sewing session once it is activated. So on April 8th, which is in a couple short weeks, or about 1 week, what day is it? I guess it's in a couple weeks. April 8th, everything will be available for viewing. As long as you're registered and you've saved your spot for the event, or for the session, I should say. It's not an event. You'll get an email saying, hey, it's April 8th and everything is available for viewing now. You can grab up your embroidery collection and join us, and you can watch at any time. So it's not a live event. Just on April 8th is when everything is available for viewing. So you can go in there on April 8th or any time after, and you can navigate through the session at your own pace. So there's 5 lessons, and then within those lessons, there are multiple sections. And once you register, I created a whole how-to video tutorial where I take you through on a screenshot how to navigate through the session. So you can click through each lesson and just watch it start to finish, or you can head on to lesson 3 for creating freestanding patches. I'm making this up. I can't remember which lesson that is, but you get the idea. You could kind of click through however you want to consume that content. All right, Marty says, sign me up. Yes, it's only $19.99, and you get all of those lessons, all of those videos, and that full patch collection with the 5 blank patches and the 3 crafty merit badge patches as well. Jana says, my patch kit should be delivered tomorrow. Perfect. Love that. All right. Enough about patches, although I'm sure you'll hear me talk about them again and again because I'm just so excited to finally bring this to all of you. As you know, we work on these events for a long, long time, so I get really excited when I can finally start talking about them and telling you all about them. All right, so let's get in the springy spirit. You know, Easter is a little bit late this year. It's not until April 20th, but y'all know you need a fuzzy bunny in your life, whether it's for Easter or just for springtime. It also makes a really great baby shower gift. Something about fuzzy bunnies and babies, they just go together, right? They're just so cute. But this is perfect for embellishing pillows, wall hangings, table toppers, embroidered greeting cards. You know, speaking of sessions, we have an entire embroidery session over at sewingonline.sulky.com on how to embroider greeting cards, how to stabilize cardstock, how to embroider on something like felty or twilly and then turn that into a card. We also have an entire card selection of designs that go with that embroidered greeting card session. So if you purchase up your patches session, I encourage you to look at the other sessions available because this would make a really, really cute springy card for Easter. And if you grab up that embroidery session, there's actually a Happy Easter card design that is included with purchase of that session. So it's like getting a twofer. Okay, so this is an adorable design. It's very large in scale, okay? You do need at least a 5x7 hoop to stitch out this little guy. I call him a little guy, but he's pretty big. He's almost 5 inches by almost 7 inches, all right? So very impactful, and it is specially digitized for using our Sulky 12-weight Filaine thread. So who out there has worked with this 12-weight Filaine thread before? It's a little bit tricky to use in your sewing machine, which is why I want to talk about it today, because I don't want you grabbing up this free design and not having that background information for how to set up your sewing machine to accept this little bit tricky thread. The reason that it is tricky is because it's very, very textured. It's very fuzzy. It has, you know, when you run your finger across it, you can feel the texture of this thread. What's really unique about it is when you brush it with our Filaine Wire Brush, the fibers kind of bloom, okay? So while it still has this strong core running through it, the fibers around it bloom up and it creates this faux fur effect. So it's really amazing for things like this fuzzy bunny, for things like our Peekaboo Pets design. We've got 3 dogs and 3 cats in our Peekaboo Pets design that are all done in Filaine. And then you'll also see some Sulky Poly Deco thread in this design. That's the inner ear and the facial details and the whiskers of the bunny. The Poly Deco is used for the detailing of the design. So you want to brush out the Filaine, and the Poly Deco is kind of like matted inside of it, sort of. Okay, so it's not on top of the Filaine. It will be on top of just those inner stitches of the Filaine to kind of, I don't know, help them pop out around that Poly Deco thread. Poly Deco is a 40 weight polyester thread, whereas the Filaine is a 12 weight acrylic thread. All right, so the lower the number, the thicker the thread. So you can just imagine 12 weight versus 40 weight. So you really cannot stitch this design out unless you have that 12 weight acrylic Filaine thread, because how it's digitized is the stitches are much longer and they are spread out to accommodate the thickness of the thread. So if you can imagine 2 stitches next to each other, we'll go with like a long and short stitch. That's kind of how it's digitized. Instead of them being, stacked stitches, they're kind of digitized so that they have long and short stitches all across the, head and ears and little paws or feet. So if you can imagine these 2 threads next to each other, Filaine's very, very thick. So the 2 threads, the 2 stitches creating these, 2 stitches next to each other are quite long. So for Poly Deco, the fibers are much, much thinner, right? So those stitches are going to be much closer together. So if you go to use a 12 weight thread in place of a 40 weight thread, the stitches are going to look like they're almost on top of each other because there is not enough room in that digital design to accommodate the thread thickness. Does this make sense? Just the same, if you use a 40 weight thread when a 12 weight thread is intended, right? Let's say we use a Poly Deco thread for the first step of the design, which is all of that fur. Well, the stitches are going to look like there's spaces in between them because the thread is so much thinner. Does this make sense? All right. So Linda's saying, remind me, what needle do I use? Okay, so with the 12 weight thread, you're going to use a large eye needle, a 116 needle. For the Poly Deco thread, you're going to go down to a 90-14 or an 80-12 needle. Okay, so that means when you switch to the Poly Deco, which is color stop 2, there's only 2 color stops in this design. When you switch to the Poly Deco, you also need to swap your needle size. Because what's going to happen is if you use that 116 needle, I'm trying to find something that has a large hole in it so I can explain this. I'll use my lint roller. So let's say this is the eye of your needle, which of course would be oval instead of a circle, but you get the idea. If you use your 116, which is a huge hole in your needle, and you have a smaller, thinner weight of thread going through it, there's actually all this room in here for your thread to kind of move around during your high speed stitch out. Okay, so your thread is kind of moving while it's stitching out. So that can result in thread loops, or what we would say, why are the stitches so loose? Then you go start fiddling with your tension and things like that. It's not the tension's fault. It's because your needle is too big for the thread weight. So you need to go down a needle size so that there isn't that much room for your thread to pass through. Same goes for, well, not the same. Conversely, if you're using a needle that is too small for your thread weight, then you're going to have thread breakage, and your needle could also bend during the stitch out. Because what's happening is the thread's kind of pulling on the needle to try to come out of that hole that's too small for it. Does this make sense? So when you're sewing at high speeds, if you're finding that your thread is breaking a lot, go up a needle size. Choose a bigger needle. And by bigger, I mean a bigger hole in the needle. Okay? So 116 needle for the 12 weight Filaine thread, 90-14 or 80-12 for the 40 weight poly deco. And don't forget to swap those needles when you swap out your thread. Another thing when you're doing this stitch out is you want to use a bobbin thread that is much lighter weight than your top thread. You do not want to use Filaine thread also in the bobbin. It will create too much density for even the sharpest needle to go through. Because keep in mind, you're also going through fabric and stabilizer. And a lot of the times when I use this heavier weight thread, I like to use a heavier weight fabric as well, so that there's enough thread count, enough sort of oomph, right, in that fabric to hold on to all of that thickness of thread. So I like to use maybe a lightweight canvas, a denim. These fabrics look so great on denim. They also look really great on Sulky Filaine, which, as you know, is manufactured to accept a lot of thread. I have sewn all of our pollen designs, which I'm going to show you in a little while. I'm going to show you, so I got distracted by what appears to be some spam in the chat, so I'll try to take care of that for you all. Sorry. And anyway, it's super distracting when that happens. I apologize. Sulky Filaine is really great for these dense designs that are using very thick thread. Okay. So let's go back to our bunny and the different things we need to do in our machine. Along with our lighter weight bobbin, like choose a 60 weight Sulky bobbin thread, or a 60 weight Sulky poly light thread. Now, when to use which one, right? I would use just a regular 60 weight bobbin thread for creating something that's going to have a backing to it, a pillow, a quilt that's going to have a backing, something like this. If I'm going to sew this and make it into a tote bag that doesn't have a lining, something like that, I would probably choose the Sulky poly light thread, and I would match or come close to the colors in the design for the bobbin thread color. So for this fuzzy bunny, I would use a light pink poly light for the bobbin, and then a light gray poly light for the bobbin when I switch out that thread color. That way, the inside, if I'm opening up the tote and I'm seeing the back side of the embroidery, looks just as pretty as the right side. It's not just white bobbin thread or, tan bobbin thread. So that's really up to personal preference, but you want a 60 weight, a lighter weight thread in the bobbin when you're working with these really dense designs that have thicker thread elements. That way, the bobbin thread, when you look at the wrong side of the project, you should see just a hint of the upper thread or the thread on the exterior on the back side of your project. Just a hint of it should pull to the wrong side. So that is what we call a balanced stitch for machine embroidery. Now, if we're doing regular sewing or quilting, we don't want to see either thread on the front or back of our work. We want to only see the front thread on the front and the bobbin thread on the back. That's a balanced stitch for regular sewing and or quilting. But for machine embroidery, the designs are digitized and the machine works in such a way that a balanced stitch means that a little bit of that top thread's pulling to the wrong side. That's how you almost get this like 3D look with a lot of embroideries. It looks like the thread's popping off of the fabric surface because it's tightly, going to the wrong side of the work. So that's how you know you have a balanced stitch for embroidery. That being said, with this Filaine, you want to do a little bit of a test stitch out to make sure that your tension is behaving or set so that you're seeing a little bit of that Filaine on the wrong side. Now, I'm not suggesting that you stitch out this entire fuzzy bunny as a test. That would take so much thread, and you're just testing it out. I would begin the design on a piece of scrap felty or something like that, stabilized properly, and just start stitching, where the design begins for a few stitches, maybe 200 stitches. And then see what it looks like. Turn your hoop to the wrong side. Are you seeing a little bit of the Filaine on the wrong side? Then everything's going great. And then you can probably move to your finished embroidery, whatever you're going to embroider on. So a little bit of a test, stitch for 200, 300 stitches. If you need to mess with your tension a little bit, you can do so during your test stitch out. I would mark down all of those settings on your scrap. Just use a permanent marker and write directly on that felty scrap or whatever it is you're using. And then you'll know for next time when you go to use Filaine thread, these are the settings that I need on my machine. Everybody's machine is different. Some machines like mine will do an auto tension adjustment for you based on what you're using. Other machines do not do that, so you might have to fiddle with it a little bit. Okay, I find with mine, I don't do any tension adjustments when I'm working with Filaine, as long as I'm using the right needle, and as long as I'm using the right bobbin thread, I have great results. Something else that's very, very important when you are doing designs like these, first off, the design, as I mentioned, needs to be digitized for that 12 weight heavyweight thread. The design might be titled fuzzy, like we titled the fuzzy bunny. It might be titled 3D or brushed design. That's a good indication that a thread like this is used in the digitizing process for this design. All right. You need to slow your machine down as low as it will go. Yes, it's going to take longer to stitch out, but I promise you it's worth it to go as slow as you can to avoid having to stop the machine and start again. When this heavier thread is going at such high speeds, you can have thread breakage. And it's not due to the quality of the thread. It's really due to the fact that it's so heavyweight and you're going at such a high speed and you're stitching these longer stitches to fill these areas. All right. So it just undergoes some stress and some tension during the stitch out process. Go as slow as your machine will allow during the stitch out, and you will have better results. Another very important thing is when you begin and end a color stop, you need to make sure to turn off the automatic jump thread cutter. All right. It might be called auto trim, auto jump stitch, something like this, depending on your machine, make, and model. You need to turn that off, disengage it, because if you don't, what's happening is you start the stitch out, your machine goes through the fabric and ties it off a little bit to begin the embroidery. When that happens, you're creating almost like a little knot right where your needle is going to start the stitch out. So now you've pulled that Filaine thread from the beginning to the wrong side of the project, and you have this piece of heavy weight, almost like string because it's so heavyweight. Now your machine has to go over that for the rest of the stitch out. That can cause problems from the very beginning. So instead, what you want to do is start the embroidery with the thread tail of the Filaine on the upper part of your fabric, on the fabric right side. Sew for like 3 stitches and manually stop the machine, clip that little thread tail, and then continue on with the design. That way you won't have, you won't have that thread thickness for your machine to struggle to get through, or for your needle to struggle to get through. Speaking of needles, I did mention the 116 needle size. I also like to use a titanium top stitch needle. The titanium needle, as you can imagine, is super strong. And the top stitch needle means it has a slimmer point to it. So when you're going through these dense areas with this heavyweight thread, it really manages it very well. It can pierce through all of that density of the fabric, the stabilizer, and those layers of long stitches that you're creating. Rosalind is saying, where do we find this design? So I linked directly to the free Fuzzy Bunny design in the description of today's post. Under featured products, you'll see a link for this design. So you will add this to your cart at sulky.com, go through the motions of your checkout process. It'll continue to say $0 even if you add other things to your cart. Once you go through the checkout process, you'll find this design in your account at sulky.com and you can download it from there. You should also get an email confirmation of your order, which would include the design files. You'll also find the color chart for this design, but as I mentioned, it's only 2 colors. You've got your pink Filaine color and then that gray color for the detailing from the poly deco threads. All right, so we've got slowing down your machine, turning off or disengaging the auto jump thread or auto thread cutter at the beginning and end of your design, using a large needle for the Filaine, and then swapping your needle for the poly deco elements. Is there anything else I missed? Ooh, also, when you're threading the Filaine, even if you have an auto thread mechanism on your machine, I like to put a little bit of sewer's aid on the needle eye. So this is like tiny little bottle. I think I've had it for a year because you only need a little dab of this, okay? What this does is it allows the Filaine to just glide through the needle eye really effortlessly, because as I mentioned, it's a very textured thread. So all you need to do is take a tiny little drop of this. This is how much I would use. Can you even see it? Tiny drop of this, rub it between my fingers like this, and then slide it down the shaft of the needle, right at the needle eye. Then, whether you are manually threading it or using your auto thread on your machine, the thread will just go right through the needle eye. It's kind of like, my grandmother always used to lick her fingers, put it on the needle eye, and thread the needle. Some people would sort of lick the end of the thread to put it through the needle eye. It's much more effective to moisten the needle eye versus the thread end. When you moisten the needle eye, it's lubricated for that whole length of thread until you need to reapply it. Whereas if you just moisten the end of the thread, then that's the only part that has any lubrication to it. And you're already pulling it through the needle eye and it's not even on your project. So I learned that tip from the great Sue Hausman. Love her. Learned so many things from Sue Hausman, but that's one that has really stuck with me, is a little bit of sewer's aid, much better than your own spit, okay? And it's water-based. So it doesn't have any greasiness to it. It doesn't put a film or anything on your thread or on your fabrics. It's a water-based lubricant, and it's great for using thicker threads like Filaine. Also great for working with metallic threads, which actually metallic thread would be so cute for these whiskers. Might be able to swap that and see what happens. because it cuts down on like the friction from that metallic thread as it's gliding through the needle eye. All right, so that's a really good product, very inexpensive. We have it at sulky.com. One little bottle of this is gonna last you a long, long time. So probably for this Filaine stitch out, you might need to lubricate the needle eye maybe 3 times. If you're having any problems and the thread seems to be breaking on you during the stitch out, because it's just going too fast, you can't get it to go any slower, try some sewer's aid and see if that cuts down on that happening for you. All right. Let's see. So, as I mentioned, this makes an adorable pillow. I love how the bunny is kind of peeking out too. So would be really cute on like a pocket. If you want to create a pocket on a tote bag, something like this. Very, very cute design. So you can see it on this pillow. And then also, I mentioned greeting cards. I will say though, you cannot stitch this design directly on cardstock. In our greeting card session that I talked about a little while ago, there are designs that are suitable for cardstock, and then there are designs that are suitable for, let's say, felty or twilly, and then you would apply that to your cardstock card. All of that information is in that embroidered greeting card session that I linked to in the description of today's post. But I just think this card would be so adorable. Send this to somebody for Easter or just springtime, baby shower, something like this. Cute on a birthday card. And it would create quite a large card because, as I mentioned, the design is just under 5 inches by just under 7 inches. So it really is impactful. Oh, I just showed you that. Oh, and I wanted to show you this too. All right, so here is the cute little bunny on a little pillow. And you can see how you can create this bunny, obviously, using whatever fur color you want to use, simply by choosing a different Filaine thread color. I also want to mention that at sulky.com, we have 2 different sizes of spools for the Filaine thread. Filaine comes on 50-yard spools, and then it comes on 435-yard spools. You need the bigger spool for this design because it's a lot of thread. If you only have that 50-yard spool, you're only going to get a third or halfway through this design and you're going to run out of thread. So make sure you get that larger spool of Filaine for this design. So on this pillow, they've created a brown bunny with some darker brown for the poly deco accents. So you can just see this in a different way. You could make a blue bunny, a yellow bunny. You get the idea. This would be really cute embroidered on a Easter basket blank, right? Peeking out over the top of maybe a name or a monogram or something like that. Love it. All right, Patsy is saying, where can we buy the design? Okay, so this design is a freebie. It's a free machine embroidery design at sulky.com. You can either just search up Fuzzy Bunny at sulky.com and you'll find it, or you can use the link that I put in the description of today's post. All right, so I also wanted to go over a few other designs that we have out in the universe at sulky.com that feature this Filaine thread because I want you to see it in different applications. And I know a lot of you, I recognize your names for so many years watching So What, and so I know you're familiar with Filaine, but maybe you haven't tried it yet. And so this free design will hopefully, give you that chance to try it out, low investment, see how you like it. Colleen says, is the needle an embroidery needle or universal needle? So for the Filaine, for the 116, I like to use that top stitch titanium needle, mostly because I'm using a thicker fabric or a heavier weight fabric when I use this heavyweight thread. I just find that if I try to do a Filaine design on, let's say, a quilting cotton, I have to use an interlining, like an interfacing, and then a heavier weight stabilizer, and then maybe even a lining fabric or a muslin, so that I can use that thick needle and it's not essentially poking holes in the fabric. Does that make sense? So when I'm using like a lightweight canvas or a denim, I need that top stitch needle for the embroidery anyways. I like it to have a pointy tip to it to penetrate through the heaviness of the thread and the fabric. Embroidery needles and universal needles actually have a slight ballpoint tip to them. It's not as much as like a stretch needle, but it is slightly ballpoint. And I just don't have the greatest success with those needles and this thread as I do with like a top stitch. Even a microtex needle, if you can find a microtex needle has a fat needle eye, like a 116 microtex, if that exists, that would be good too, because a microtex has a really slim, sharp point. But at the same time, you need it to create a hole that's large enough for the thread thickness. So that's really why the top stitch, after all of my testing, that's the one that I use most often with this. With the poly deco that you're going to switch needles to for the detailing, you can go to an embroidery or even a universal needle for the detail elements that are in the poly deco. Okay. All right. Diane says, I have a bunch of Filaine, but have not used it yet. Love the bunny. All right. So now is your chance to use that Filaine and try this out. Okay. So some other designs. Oh, also do want to mention, you don't have to fluff up your bunny. Okay. So if you stitch it out and you just love the textural element of the Filaine and it doesn't need to be fuzzy or furry for you, you can leave it as is. And it still gives a really cool 3D effect to it. I'll show you that in a minute. If you do want to brush it up and make that faux fur effect really prominent and really fuzzy, you need this Filaine Wire Brush. Okay? This brush with these wire bristles on it, it's specifically made to fluff up this type of thread. I do want to mention though that the bristles, they're wire, okay? So I have had problems in the past with if I'm using like white Filaine and I'm brushing the heck out of it because I really want it to bloom. Like I did a Santa beard all in white Filaine. And I just brushed it and brushed it and brushed it. And it started looking almost gray. Well, it's from the wire brush kind of transferring that to the thread. So I was able to get it out. I used my favorite Grandma's Spot Remover. Who is familiar with Grandma's Spot Remover? It's like $4 or $5. Comes in this little squeezy tube. I just put it on the beard. And then I soaped it up, rinsed it away, and thankfully the grayness disappeared. But I do want you to be aware that that can happen with this wire brush, okay? You do not get the same effect just using like a toothbrush. It just doesn't work as well. But if you are concerned with the wire bristles, you can try using a really hard toothbrush and just going at it and brushing it in all directions until you get some of that fluffiness from the thread. But you're really going to have the greatest success, the most sort of fluff or faux fur effect from this Filaine wire brush. All right. And yes, it does work on fluffing chenille also. So if you have a chenille wire brush, that's probably going to work here as well. Okay. So here is, we did this beautiful embroidered blouse. And I did talk about how it's a little bit more difficult to use these heavyweight threads on fabric that's lighter weight. But for this peasant blouse with the textured embroidery, we were able to stabilize this well enough with a cutaway stabilizer that remains with the fabric as a permanent stabilizer to add these beautiful Filaine flowers on this lighter weight blouse. You can find this full tutorial on the Sulky blog, but I wanted to show you this because look at this beautiful effect you get from the Filaine threads when you don't brush them out. They look like vintage handwork embroideries. Isn't this beautiful? This looks like yarn. It looks like hand embroidery, and you've done it on your machine with this heavyweight thread. So you can get really cool effects whether you want fur or if you just want that kind of hand work or hand done look, to your designs. I've also used it in a long arm quilting machine to have kind of a vintage look to a quilt. When I was a baby, I have this baby quilt that was made for me by one of my grandmother's friends. And, she tied all the corners with a little bit of yarn. This Filaine, when you use it in the long arm and use, a really design with, a little bit longer stitches, it kind of gives that yarn quilting look. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit vintagey. It has a really cool quality to it. You might also remember this is another free design we have at sulky.com. It's called the Filaine Fox. You can find this at sulky.com absolutely for free as well. And this was actually sewn on a plushy minky fabric. Okay, so that's why there's a Sulky Solvy topper over the top of the minky. And then look how great this fox looks. This is before it is brushed out. I'm just going to blow it up so you can see it really, really big. And you can see that the first stitches are super long stitches. And you see how they're kind of long and short stitches, so they're not really stacked. You see how that's done? And then the poly deco thread is for the detailing to outline all of those sections and to give the fox his little personality and face. So that's what it looks like before it is stitched or before it's brushed out. If you are stitching this design on a textured fabric like felty or minky, okay, you want to brush this out while your Solvy topper is still intact. That way, when you go to brush the design, you aren't accidentally brushing the fibers beyond it. So if you can imagine, let's say we embroider our bunny on a sheet of felty and we go to brush it out and we're hitting a little bit of the felty around the design, the felty is going to also bloom, right? It's also going to be damaged by that wire brush. So if you have a topper in place and you've stitched your design, you can go over it with the brush, then remove the topper, and it's a beautiful result. You haven't nicked any of the fabric around it. All right. So then here is what the fox starts to look like once you start brushing it. Isn't this cool? I mean, you can really get these long wisps of faux fur and the center core of the thread still remains intact. So you do need to make sure when you are brushing it that your wire bristles are not kind of pulling the thread out or looping it. You know what I mean? You just want to brush the fibers kind of away and outward so that it blooms and has this beautiful fur look. So along with those two designs, so now we've got our fuzzy bunny and our Filaine fox that you can get $0 at sulky.com. We also have some beautiful floral designs in what is called our pollen collection. So whoever was talking earlier about how their allergies are starting to go crazy because we're in the throes of spring now, you can create some pollen out of Sulky Filaine, and it's not going to give you any allergies at all. So here are the flowers that are in the pollen collection. There's a calla lily, dandelion, a hibiscus, a gerbera daisy. You can see all the flowers here. The dandelion little fronds, whatever those are called, those are done in Filaine. The rest of the design is in Sulky rayon thread. For the calla lily, just that little center part where all the pollen sticks to it, that is done in Filaine. Rest of the design is done in rayon. So these just have little portions of Filaine to bloom. All right. Here is the hibiscus, a little bit larger. I'm going to really blow it up here so you can see most of this design is done in rayon thread, except for that center orange and yellow portion of the flower. So that's the part that you would brush up and bloom with your wire brush. So here is that dandelion design. I made a little zipper pouch out of it. And this is one of my favorite designs that we have at sulky.com because I just love the wispiness that you're creating with this acrylic thread. The dandelion looks like it is coming to life. It's nice and fuzzy. And so you can see here's what it looks like before you've done any brushing. It still is a really pretty design. You don't even need to brush it. It has this great texture and dimension to it. Again, it looks like it's done by hand. Then you start brushing and brushing away with your Filaine wire brush. And now you have these fuzzy, wispy, furry dandelion wisps that are just so perfect for a dandelion, right? It's just so realistic. Love it. So you can grab up the pollen collection or any of those individual designs at sulky.com for purchase. They are also available to purchase with a thread palette. There's so many threads in these designs that it actually comes in a slimline container. You will get all of the beautiful rayon threads that are, the outside floral elements, all the detailing. And then you'll also get the Filaine spools needed to do all the stitch outs. Denise says, where is the free fox design? Great question. It is at sulky.com and you can search up fox design and you should find it, no problem there. I didn't link to it today because I kind of forgot I was going to talk about it. Sorry about that. But you should be able to find that at sulky.com. When you grab up your fuzzy bunny, you can also search up the fox design and add that to your cart as well. They both should show up at $0. All right. Dee says, I love the wispy of the dandelion. Thank you for showing these. There's also a full tutorial for that zipper pouch on our blog at blog.sulky.com. You can look up dandelion pouch, something like that, and I'm sure that it will pop up for you. Yep, fox looks fabulous. Love that. Heather says the bunny is so adorable. I love it. Penny says, will it fluff up when washed? So actually, if you fluff it up with your Filaine wire brush and you go to wash it, once it's dried, it will still have that fluffy texture and dimension that you created. If you do not fluff it up with the brush and you go to wash it, it will still have the same qualities as before. So it's not going to fluff up with, washing and drying. You would need to actually brush it to kind of separate those fibers and get them to bloom away from the core of the thread. Great question. All right, so I think I'm all caught up on the questions. If you do have a question that I did not answer today, you can feel free to send us a message at info@sulky.com or put it in the chat here and we will get to you. I hope you enjoy this free design and that it gets you into the spirit of spring and the coming Easter holiday and that you create lots of fuzzy bunnies. Until we meet again next Tuesday for another So What?